Charlie Kirk sounds off on Kamala Harris's new candidacy and explains why conservatives should not panic about the Democrats' latest switcheroo. I'm Vince with Resist the Mainstream. If you enjoy our content, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so we can keep bringing you videos like this. And that said, let's get into his take on this because it's pretty interesting.
You're living through right now a sugar high. There is a Democrat sugar high, and it's going to last a couple weeks. It could even last a month. You see, for over 18 months, the Democrat base has been very sleepy. Not excited about Joe Biden, upset that Donald Trump very well might become the next president. Many of them have even resigned to the fact that Trump was going to become president, especially after that debate. The elevation of Kamala Harris from vice president to the candidate has unleashed an expected and anticipated sugar high. No different than if you were 7 years old and you ate a bunch of Twizzlers and Snicker bars and Hershey candy bars and you have all this energy, but it goes away after about 45 minutes. And that crash is a real one.
Yep.
You are seeing a honeymoon period by the media. When we get an opportunity to expose the record of Kamala Harris, the honeymoon period will fade. But make no mistake, you are about to see a series of polls, a series of news items that show that this is a very close race, and it very well might end up being a very close race. Kamala Harris very well might choose Josh Shapiro as her vice president, or Mark Kelly, and that would make Arizona far more in play than it is right now. And we are doing the work on the ground in Arizona every single day. The entire race has reset. Now, remember, she was ranked the most liberal U.S. senator when she was in the Senate.
But I think it's worth noting on this entire discussion that the race has reset essentially to what it was Trump v. Biden before the debate. Trump is still leading in the national polling averages, whether you want to look at RCP or Decision Desk, and he just hit his highest direct percentage, not highest lead, but direct percentage. I think it's about 48.2% that he has ever reached in the history of the RCP polling average. So, you know, is it true that Kamala is getting a honeymoon bump? Absolutely. But even with that honeymoon bump in mind, did the race get closer? Yes. But Trump is still in the lead. So this is obviously not a reason to get complacent, but at the same time, I don't think it's grounds for panic. We should not be running around like headless chickens like some conservatives are on the internet saying, Kamala's gonna win. She has 2008 Obama energy, all this stuff. It's not actually true. And by the way, if we know one thing about the political history of Kamala Harris, it's that her candidacy always collapses. Look at 2020. So just something to keep in mind.
She ranked and scored to the left of Bernie Sanders. She believes in giving free benefits to illegal aliens. She wants to abolish ICE. She wants to make critical race theory the curriculum of the land. She applauded the defunding of police. She wanted to ban all fossil fuels, get rid of the filibuster. She wants to get rid of fracking. Her staff has some of the highest turnover we've ever seen in Washington, D.C. Kamala Harris staff exodus, 92% gone in 3 years. Anybody that has been around Kamala Harris knows that she is See, Kamala Harris is on TikTok right now, dancing to the new trend. Daisy educated me on it. As Kamala Harris is dancing, Americans are dying of opioid overdoses. As Kamala Harris is dancing, trying to win over Gen Z voters, our border remains wide open. So what does this honeymoon period look like? Well, first of which, Reuters came out with a poll yesterday and shows that Kamala Harris is up 2 points on Donald Trump. You might say, oh, I don't believe that. This is going to be a much closer race than a lot of you are comfortable with. This is going to be a much closer race than you would have imagined with Joe Biden. This is going to come down to 5,000 votes here, 300 votes here, 200 votes here, which goes to show that every single one of you deciding whether to do the work to find new voters or not is going to be more consequential than ever before. And that is why I'm wearing the shirt, Find New Voters.
And that part I absolutely agree with, and it should be true regardless of where the race is. If we're 10 points down, actually, if we're 10 points up, if we're 1 point up, 1 point down, it shouldn't matter. Always play like you're behind and always work as hard as you can, because yes, you never know, it could come down to those 5,000 votes. So that part's absolutely true. Don't get complacent. Always work like we need every single vote, because we might, right? We might.
Every day. You go out into the streets, you go to the grocery store, and you find a voter or two. You find two people and you talk to them. Here are 17 examples of Kamala Harris's Marxist, communist, far-left record. She co-sponsored legislation to protect criminals, hardened criminals, from being deported back to their country of origin. She backed Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All legislation, universal health care. She backed banning private health insurance. If you guys like your health insurance, she wants to take it from you. She supported giving taxpayer-funded coverage to illegals. So while you can't afford to go on vacation with your family, she wants to raise your taxes to pay for health coverage for foreigners. She has vocally supported banning all fracking, which would result in millions of job losses, including hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs in Pennsylvania. She backed defunding the police and getting rid of all the police. She has compared ICE, which does amazing work identifying people that, for example, they killed the person who killed Laken Riley, or the mother of 5 in Maryland. She said the ICE is similar to the KKK. She wants to ban plastic straws, but not ban late-term abortion. She wants and has defended banning offshore drilling. She wants to undo Donald Trump's border security measure. She has supported decriminalizing and allowing illegal border crossings, calling it a civil offense, not a criminal offense. She said she wouldn't treat illegal aliens as criminals.
This is the strongest argument against Kamala Harris, by the way, because the current truth is that she has little appeal outside of the Democrat constituency. Yes, it is very true. The Democrat base is very excited about her, way more than they were about Joe Biden, but she does not have any strong appeal with independents at the current moment. So if the Trump campaign can not only convince independent, moderate voters that Kamala is not only unappealing, but actively dangerous, actively radical, instill a very valid and legitimate fear of a Kamala Harris presidency, you just won the election like that, for sure. So I think everyone needs to regurgitate these talking points all over the place. And by the way, they're true. They are true. So it's not like we're lying in doing so.
She has called for starting ICE from scratch and get rid of all immigration, customs, and enforcement. She argued that temporarily closing the border when fentanyl, drugs, and opioids are coming across and killing our people violates federal law. She went out of her way and raised money for the Minnesota Freedom Fund, a far-left organization that pays to bail out and jail violent criminals, including accused murderers and rapists. She supported vocally cuts to Los Angeles's police department. She called efforts to add...
How's that going, by the way? George Gascon, how's that going?
More police to the streets. Wrong-headed thinking. Kamala Harris was America's most liberal senator. She is a California communist. She is a liberal that makes Gavin Newsom look like a moderate. And by the way, I'm not even touching the surface about how she probably supports, we don't have it on the record yet, state-sanctioned kidnapping of children under the trans agenda. Where does Kamala Harris stand on puberty blockers for 11-year-olds? Where does Kamala Harris stand on taxpayer-funded abortions?
What's her answer to it? She's going to dance on TikTok.
Kamala Harris is a cold, cruel, cunning opportunist. She couldn't care less about the suffering of Gen Z not being able to own a home. She could not care less. She does not have the sympathy or the empathy about the 110,000 plus Americans that died from drug overdoses. Kamala Harris knew that Joe Biden was sick and not up to the task, and she worked with Obama, Pelosi, and Schumer and led him to the slaughter and is now taking his throne. In fact, this is something we're hearing more and more in focus groups from voters on the ground. Play cut 110.
If the DNC would have taken this path maybe 2 months ago when these same problems existed, I might have leaned towards Kamala, our vice president. Now, knowing the things that they've been hiding in plain sight from the American public. I cannot find it in myself to vote for a Democrat, and potentially I might never vote for a Democrat again.
Good for you. This guy's an honest person, and I hope that there are millions of honest people that think the same way. Kamala Harris is a coup plotter. Kamala Harris is the Brutus to Joe Biden's Caesar. Kamala Harris was part of a shadow campaign. It's so obvious. On debate night, she wasn't there with Joe Biden. The aesthetics and the visual showed her awfully presidential. She was ready for this, but she allowed the process to play out. Kamala Harris and her team worked quietly with Barack Hussein Obama and Chuck U. Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and the New York Times, and they launched a coup against a sitting president, and she knew about his condition.
I think on many levels that also demonstrates why Kamala Harris would be so dangerous. Is she is such a cunning opportunist. She just doesn't care, right? She just doesn't care. So you want to talk about, would she sell America out potentially to foreign nations? Would she do literally anything that was politically expedient to her, including jailing her political opponents potentially? All of these different things you should be considering when we have this discussion about how dangerous Kamala Harris potentially is. So not only has she embraced very radical far left positions, but at the same time, she's a sociopath, right? And when you're in charge of a democratic nation and people's lives are at stake with the very things that you do, that is not the type of character that you want in charge. So all just things to think about. That said, let me know your thoughts. And until next time, I've been Vince with Resist the Mainstream. Peace.